And then,
Give it back to you.
Yep.
All right.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Shippensburg University and to the first of our Empowering Communities to Preserve Our Historic Resources workshops. My name is Steve Berg. I'm a professor here at Shippensburg University.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Shippensburg. My name is Holly Smith, and I'm the program manager for the Center for Land Use and Sustainability. I'm reading this out. Yeah. Okay. So what I'd like to do to kick us off first thing, and this is so appropriate for this organization and this group of people, I want to read our land acknowledgement for Shippensburg. Please know that this is a draft and it has not been formally adopted by the university yet. So we're kind of trying it out in different venues to acknowledge the peoples that were here prior to settlement. Shippensburg University is located near the midpoint of the 1,200-mile long Great Valley. The valley within which the university was built served for millennia as a natural corridor and territorial boundary for the original inhabitants of these lands as they traveled north and south and from the mountains to the bay and the sea beyond. Carved by the corrosive powers of the Connettagwinnett and Conococheague Creeks, the Cumberland Valley, its waterways, and natural resources were utilized seasonally and sustainably by generations upon generations of Lenni Lenape, Susquehannock, Shawnee, Piscataway, Haudenosaunee peoples before their displacement from these lands. Unfortunately, these are the only indigenous American names for this region still in use. It is therefore critical that Shippensburg University recognizes its responsibility and commitment as stewards of this region to work with indigenous peoples who no longer reside on the land of their ancestors. We acknowledge that our community, which sits upon the watershed divide of these two river systems, must support the work of Native peoples and advance our role in educating others so we may collectively work to restore indigenous sovereignty and connections to ancestral lands, oral traditions, and other cultural systems. Thank you.
So I wanted to say first and foremost how exciting it is to be here in a room full of people who are passionate about preserving the historic building sites and landscapes of the South Mountain region. I know that I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but we are in this magnificent space tonight because we know that the historic buildings that we're talking about, the farms, the forests, the fields, are not just places, but places that help to define who we are. They embody the history of our communities, and they shape the character of our region. We also really felt it was important to come together as a group because we know that preservation can't be accidental or left to happenstance, especially living as we do in one of the fastest growing regions in the state. Instead, what we really need to be is deliberate and thoughtful and intentional in our work to determine what sites are important to us, to explain clearly why they matter, and then take steps to protect them for future generations. Tonight, this is the first of what we hope will be 4 workshops that we wanted to focus on the why of historic preservation, why we do this work, why it is important, and why it matters to us and our communities. I'm so happy that we can be having this conversation in this particular space, Stewart Hall. I did want to take just a moment to tell you a little bit about its history. When I arrived at Shippensburg 25 years ago, this building was a pretty ticky-tacky conglomeration of temporary walls, cheap wood siding, drop ceilings, fluorescent lights, and lots of pipes wrapped in asbestos. It had been a building that had been badly neglected, even though it was listed as part of the Cumberland Valley Normal School Historic District in 1985. It really was sort of a sad space here on campus. But like so many other historic places, there were people who cared really deeply about this building. It was the college's first gym. It was state of the art in 1895 with its elevated running track and hot and cold running water. It was the student union in the 1950s through the 1970s. It was, for a very brief period, a residence hall for World War II veterans who came to campus after World War II on the GI Bill and were stacked in here on bunk beds because of the housing shortage that existed on campus. And then it fell into pretty serious disrepair. There were a group of alumni in particular, but also some faculty, some administrators, some students who were really interested in trying to restore this building. In 2014, there was a feasibility study, and then over 6 years, and after raising $1.5 million, this building was brought back to its glory. If you haven't, I would encourage you to look up because really, for me, one of the magnificent pieces of this building is this building was constructed when Shippensburg was at its heyday as a furniture manufacturing center. And so the beauty of the woodwork is really a testament to that moment in time. I want to let you know that tonight we are here as part of a partnership with the goal to help support and connect people in our region who care about historic places and to try to help you to have the tools you need to preserve the places that matter to you. I wanted to very quickly just acknowledge some of the partners who've been working together. Holly Smith has been working with us as a representative of the Shippensburg University Center for Land Use. David Smith, where is David? Is our representative from the Cumberland County Historical Society. Elizabeth Grant, who's out in the hall. Elizabeth is with the Cumberland County Planning Department. Frank Grumbine is our representative from the State Historic Preservation Office. Frank is the Central Region Community Preservation Coordinator, and we're very fortunate to have Frank's predecessor, Brian Van Sweden, who is coming out of retirement to support this work. Thank you, Brian. I also wanted to acknowledge Christine Musser, local preservationist and historic preservation consultant, who has really been the heart and soul of this initiative and really did so much to make it happen. So we will be holding 4 workshops this year. The next one will be at the New Cumberland Public Library on June 13th. And then there will be 2 more in the fall that will be focusing on different topics that you have told us are important to you. One of the things that I'd like to note is prior to setting up these workshops, we did conduct a survey. We got over 550 responses from people who care about historic preservation. And on your agenda on the back are some of the results of that survey, if you hadn't noticed. We are also compiling a handbook that will provide both guidance and resources on how to do historic preservation. A couple last bits of housekeeping. First, I wanted to thank the groups who are supporting this work. We received a grant from the Community Conservation Partnership Program, the Environmental Stewardship Fund under the administration of the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, Bureau of Recreation and Conservation. The grant was awarded through the South Mountain Partnership with management oversight of the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. We are a partner of the South Mountain Partnership, an alliance of organizations working to preserve and enhance the cultural and natural assets of the South Mountain landscape in central Pennsylvania. I'm going to turn things over to Holly for just a moment, because if you are interested, there is an opportunity for you to get a credential.
Thanks, Steve. That was great. So before we go to the digital badge, I want to make sure that everybody has completed the pre-workshop assessment. So this is an important part of our funding process. So on your agenda, there's a QR code at the top. If you would prefer to have a paper copy of it, it's only 6 questions. Feel free to raise your hand and Elizabeth will rush forth and provide a paper copy for you. But otherwise, you can just scan it and you'll be linked right away to a quick 6-question survey. And then at the end, don't leave. You have to do it again. So there's just one more question at the end. And so please feel free to do that. That's important data for us. So the other opportunity, and I want to do a shout out for the Shippensburg University Office of Workforce Development, who handled all of our registrations and been very supportive of the process. They also provided the idea of registrants and participants receiving a digital badge, which is it's kind of a milestone that you can put on your social media platform, especially business related, like LinkedIn, for instance. And it highlights that you've achieved certain competencies and have certain understandings based on your series of workshops that you've attended. So if you're going to attend 4 and you want the digital badge, make sure that you connect with one of the partners here, and then we'll make sure you get that. There is a cost of $10 for that. So, and feel free to talk to us about that. So, great. Oops.
So just a couple of other really important pieces of information. Number one, if you need to use the restrooms, they're actually located in the basement of this building. So you can either use the stairs. I feel like I'm on an airplane. You can either use the stairs at the front or through the doors there. There's an elevator that can take you down to the basement. Also, there is food available at the back. So feel free to help yourself to that. We will be taking a break at 6 o'clock. So if you want to grab food at that point, that would be a good moment as well. So without further ado, I would like to turn things over to our keynote speaker for tonight, Dr. Andre Weltman, who is the president of the Friends of Pine Grove Furnace State Park. I'd also just like to congratulate Andre, who is the 2024 recipient of the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources Individual Volunteer of the Ward. Andre will be sharing with us his thoughts on the value of historic preservation in the South Mountain region.
Welcome, everyone. I appreciate the invitation to speak this evening. In this and 3 subsequent workshops, we'll be discussing historic preservation all across the South Mountain landscape, which includes portions of Cumberland, Franklin, Adams, and York counties. The focus is especially on preservation of buildings, though the concept of preservation extends further than just old structures. Historic properties are a shared resource, whether or not most people ever consider the matter. I want to acknowledge up front that preservation is not on the radar of many of our neighbors. Let's face it, your own interest in the workshop this evening means you probably are already involved or at least aware of the idea of historic preservation. There's a bit of preaching to the choir in events like the one this evening. Choir or not, let's consider some basic questions. Why should we care? Why historic preservation? I offer the thought that preservation matters to everyone. You don't have to be a history buff or interested in architecture or archaeology or researching your family's genealogy to benefit from maintaining and saving the older buildings in our region. These buildings might be in downtowns, or they might be in residential neighborhoods or industrial and commercial settings that maybe didn't even exist when a structure was first built. Or they might still be in a rural setting where they were first built. Wherever they are, they contribute to a landscape that is desirable, sustainable, and economically vibrant. The word preservation can apply to more than just old buildings. It includes the preservation of archaeological sites, historically significant industrial infrastructure, and farmland and farming heritage. It can refer to the preservation of family and community memories and of old and perhaps almost lost arts and skills. However, specific historic structures often provide the most obvious aspect of this broader concept of preservation and are a convenient hook upon which to save these other, sometimes less directly physical aspects of our shared cultural history. When we lose old buildings, it contributes to a collective forgetting, a cultural amnesia of our shared past and its lessons, good and bad. We suffer from a loss of sense of place or place memory. The director of the Pennsylvania State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO, said in this regard, "Historic places are many things to many people. They help define who we are and connect us to every facet of our lives. Historic places are our homes, local businesses, places of worship, and schools. They are destinations and recreational sites, and they offer experiences for us to learn about the world around us. Historic places are the foundation of Pennsylvania's tourism economy, and they offer us opportunities to explore every corner of the Commonwealth. Historic places bring neighbors together to rally around properties that connect them to their shared history. These ideas are maybe too subjective for some people, or to use another phrase, too squishy. So let's consider the hard economic benefits of preservation. Most directly, this involves heritage tourism, destinations clearly defined by their preservation of the past. More generally, I think it's safe to say that tourists prefer to visit locations that have preserved their historic sensibilities. Not many people choose to visit a landscape like this, except out of necessity. You may recognize this as the so-called Miracle Mile on the east end of Carlisle. This stretch of businesses serves an important role for transportation, but it's not very attractive, not very approachable, not very human. Contrast that with downtown Carlisle in the Historic District, which is established by the legally authorized Historical Architectural Review Board, or HARB. The historic area is much more human-scaled, if you will. It has, for lack of a more specific term, a pleasant character. And I say that despite the sometimes fierce traffic downtown. Surveys and studies in Pennsylvania and nationally have repeatedly demonstrated the increased property values and general economic benefits arising from historic preservation and tourism related to that preservation. This report was commissioned in 2011 by the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission, or PHMC. And it notes, we found that historic preservation efforts have significant positive economic impacts, including an increase in property values, downtown revitalization, tourism activity, job creation, and tax revenue generation. The economic benefits are substantial. I urge you to look at the report if you want more data. It's not worth the time this afternoon to show you endless tables and graphs. The web link for this report is available in the handouts. Further quoting from the 90-page report. Historic preservation activities confer additional benefits that are more qualitative in nature, but are no less important in making the case for more historic preservation activity. This includes things like aesthetics and education. Historic buildings have been described as primary documents for the study and appreciation of history, architecture, art, and culture, and help preserve an area's unique identity and sense of place. There's environmental sustainability. Rehabilitation of historic buildings capitalizes on the embodied energy of existing structures and avoids the more environmentally costly route of constructing new buildings and using up open space. And then there's revitalization and stabilization. Historic preservation contributes to the mending and safeguarding of older communities and structures, can improve housing stock and stabilize working class neighborhoods, and has been used to great effect to target economic activity to areas of need. None of this should come as a surprise. As already noted, historic preservation ties into larger concepts of a sense of place and the value of walkable, accessible human places to live, work, and play. Old buildings are often more approachable and humanizing. One reason is that they were generally designed and built before car culture overwhelmed our society. Critics like Jane Jacobs have written about the problem of losing human-scale infrastructure. Jacobs spoke of mingling old and newer buildings to create vibrant, livable city landscapes. She said, when distance and convenience set in, the small, the various, and the personal wither away. I'll also point you to James Howard Kunzler, a curmudgeonly observer of modern architecture and the environment built around automobiles. His 1993 book, The Geography of Nowhere, is very much worth your time, though I don't necessarily recommend some of his later writing. Kunzler wrote about humanizing architecture, and more generally everywhere we live, to recreate a nation of places worth caring about, places of enduring quality and memorable character. Historic buildings, I suggest, have a key role to play in that effort. In popular culture, Joni Mitchell warned us that you don't know what you've got till it's gone. They paved paradise and put up a parking lot. She was singing about ecology and personal relationships, but it applies to historic preservation too. Despite the clear benefits and desirability of historic preservation, government interest and support has varied at the local, municipal, county, and state levels. Government support is certainly vastly better than a century ago. As an example, when Pennsylvania state government acquired the former Iron Company property at Pine Grove Furnace in 1913. They knocked down various structures that we dearly wish we still had now. This is what the center of the property looked like just after the state purchased it. And you'll notice the beautiful air pump building in the center of this photo. The timing is ironic, as 1913 is also the year that Pennsylvania created the forerunner of today's PHMC. This is what it looks like today. The sensibilities were different back then. Even as late as 1930, there were significant structures that the Commonwealth chose not to save and restore, especially the historic blacksmith shop. Today, we would raise money and petition for restoring remnants of local ironmaking, even if their condition wasn't so great. They're part of the industrial heritage of all Pennsylvanians. This is a convenient moment to mention the group I lead, the Friends of Pine Grove Furnace, which is a chapter of the nonprofit Pennsylvania Parks and Forests Foundation. PPFF is focused on state parks and state forests, while we occasionally have opportunities to work with the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources to preserve historic park structures, such as the old stone furnace stack. That's just one of the many things we do at Pine Grove Furnace. The more general topic of friends groups dedicated to historic preservation can be a topic of panel discussion this evening if desired. Fortunately, the state now requires review in certain circumstances, such as on state-owned lands, PennDOT construction projects, etc. Many people don't know that PennDOT conducts most of the archaeological investigations in Pennsylvania. This is driven at the federal level by the National Historic Preservation Act, signed into law in 1966 by President Lyndon B. Johnson, and a range of other laws at the federal and state level since then, including the Pennsylvania History Code, or Title 37, and the Pennsylvania Municipal Planning Code. A very useful resource is this roundup of regulations by We Conserve PA. The web link for this page is on your handouts. Another important source of information is the Pennsylvania State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO, part of PHMC. On their website is a statewide planning document, which, in their words, is a guide for planning and decision-making, and intended to encourage broad participation in planning for historic and cultural resources, identify challenges, outline realistic goals to meet those challenges, and I think most importantly, inspire action. While historic structures and archaeological sites on government land are generally protected at the federal and state level, this is not true for private land. There is some protection and encouragement for preservation on private property at the municipal level, but it's generally quite limited. That's something we can talk about in these workshops. Again, the web link for this blog, which has some useful things to say about local preservation, is available on your handout. Some laws do try to promote preservation by private landowners. Most recently, a bill is moving forward in Harrisburg to provide grants of up to $500,000 for historic preservation. This news item is from less than a month ago. One of our major problems in preserving historic resources is tension with residential and commercial development. Let's be clear, not all development is bad, but too often development stands in direct contradiction to preservation. Let me offer the idea that major land development and preservation do not necessarily need to be at odds with each other, though it can often be hard to see a way to thread the needle, so to speak. In our region, significant development related to trucking and warehouses has led to the loss of all too many historic buildings and farms. Here is the Frederick Watts Barn, of great significance in the history of modern agriculture, which was knocked down in 1988, despite efforts by preservationists. This is what it looks like now. All that's there is a roadside marker. A similar, more recent loss is the nationally significant Bell Tavern on the Carlisle Pike, torn down in 2017. Now, it's just a roadside marker. It's not all doom and gloom. There were also success stories which led to buildings being saved, such as the Oliver Pollock House, also on the Carlisle Pike, a tavern built around 1787. Sometimes structures are saved by moving them rather than knocked down. As just one local example, the Enola Miller House was moved to accommodate development while not losing the building nor removing it entirely from its original context. Moving a building is, of course, extremely expensive and difficult, but at least it was preserved. Other preservation success stories include the Mount Tabor Church and the associated cemetery, remembering and commemorating the historic Black community in Mount Holly Springs. And here's a shout out to Randy Heichman for the restoration of the Heichman Mill. Meanwhile, some mills hang in the balance, such as the Barnett's Mill in Dickinson Township. Tonight's panelists and audience members can talk about what worked and what didn't in these and other local examples. We can perhaps also consider the 4 basic standards of preservation, restoration, reconstruction, and rehabilitation. Preservation is to document, maintain, retain what still exists. Restoration is to remove alterations not in keeping with the historic period of interest. Reconstruction is to recreate what may have been lost as faithfully as possible. And rehabilitation is to alter and add to meet continuing or changing uses while not losing historic character. That last bullet item can be restated as adaptive reuse, a useful term to remember. Pine Grove Furnace State Park has several great examples of adaptive reuse. The Ironmasters Mansion, completed in 1829, served as an apartment building through the mid-20th century, but was in dire condition by the 1970s. It was renovated and for almost 4 decades has served as an overnight guest house for Appalachian trail hikers and a rental venue for weddings and similar gatherings. A very short distance from the mansion, the iron company's grist mill, which dates to 1783, was almost in ruins by the 1920s, but was renovated to become a private residence from 1923 to the 1960s. After several other uses by the state park, it was leased to the Appalachian Trail Museum in 2010, and now the former mill is a unique museum about hiking and the Appalachian National Scenic Trail, to use the AT's formal name. The museum attracts 10,000 people annually. What a great example of adaptive reuse. So what can you do to promote historic preservation, whether in general or for a specific building? Here's just a few thoughts. Learn, become more aware of the history that surrounds us, and share it with neighbors, visitors, and business owners. Maybe invite some developers to the next workshop. Support your state, county, and local historical societies, Pennsylvania Heritage Foundation, and other organizations. Find out about resources that exist, including the National and County Registers of Historic Places, the Cumberland County Historical Society's Opportunities Watch List of Threatened Properties, the SHPO and PHMC, which I've already mentioned, Preservation Pennsylvania, We Conserve PA, etc. Other resources include municipal planning documents and local historic districts. There are incentives for historic preservation, such as federal tax credits. Finally, get involved by regularly attending local and county government meetings. Your voice matters. Volunteer for local and county planning and preservation committees, and perhaps even consider running for elected position. I myself am the volunteer chairman of the Cook Township Planning Committee, and tonight at 7:30 is a monthly meeting of the township supervisors. So you please excuse me when I leave tonight's workshop a little early so I can get to that meeting. I'll close with a quote from historian William Murtagh, who was involved in the early years of the National Register of Historic Places. At its best, preservation engages the past in a conversation with the present over a mutual concern for the future. I look forward to that conversation with all of you during the panel discussion this evening and many conversations in the future. Thank you for your attention, and I'd be happy to take any questions or comments. Anybody have anything? You can save it all for the panel discussion. Okay, thanks very much.
Well, thank you very much, Andre. And I thought that provided an awesome way to get started to think about a lot of the different benefits of historic preservation. One of the things we know is that, as Andre said, the folks who came here tonight are very likely people who are passionate about historic preservation, who care about a particular community, a particular resource, a particular site. And what we wanted to make sure is that um, while we're too big a group to pass the mic around the room and each talk about our own particular interests, we did want to make sure we had some time for all of you to talk to each other, to share some of your interests, to share some of your thoughts, and to be able to share those out with others. So what we wanted to do at this point is I'm going to, and Holly, can I ask your assistance here? I'm going to save one just for myself. Actually, I'll save a white one. There we go. Holly's going to be distributing to each of the tables a sheet that will help you as we try to promote a little bit of conversation among those of you here tonight. What we're going to ask you to do is to take just a couple of minutes, and I know some of you are at tables filled with friends, some of you may not be, but we did want you to take a couple of minutes to give the people at your table an opportunity to introduce each other, get to know who you are sitting with. And then what we'd like you to do is to actually take a couple of minutes to talk about what inspired you to be here today. Are there particular issues, a particular place, a particular type of historical resource that matters most to you? We also are very curious for you to share what do you see as the greatest opportunities for historic preservation in our area, as well as the greatest challenges. And then the third thing, are there specific tools, information, skills, or resources that you'd like to have in order to assist you with advancing the work of historic preservation? So please do take a couple of minutes to introduce yourselves to each other. Do take some time to talk about why you're here tonight. What inspires you? What are you concerned about? What do you need in terms of doing the work of historic preservation? And then we're going to ask for each table. You'll notice that at the bottom of each of your sheets, so each of you could be that person. We would like somebody from your table to tear off the bottom of your sheet and to take notes, to write down what do you see as the major opportunities in our region? What do you see as the major challenges in our region? And what are helpful tools, resources, or information you'd like to have? What we'll do after we've had a little bit of time to talk as tables, we will invite you. We probably won't be able to get to all of the tables, but if there's things that came up at your table that you'd like to share with the rest of the people in attendance, we would welcome that. And then we're going to ask for each group there's a board by the food. We're going to actually ask you to tape your bottom of your sheet. So the opportunities, challenges, helpful tools, one per table. We'll have you tape those up there so when we take our break, other people can see what your table thought were the challenges, opportunities, or resources that might benefit historic preservation in our area. So at this moment, if you're at a table by yourself, which I don't think is a problem, what I'd ask you to do is take a couple of minutes and give each person at your table an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then dive into some of these points if you would. And you may want to appoint one person. You have a pen in your hand to be the person to write down the themes that come up at your table. So take it away. So we're going to let the conversation go just a couple more minutes. And I know that there's some really interesting conversations happening, but please do, as a group, if you can, try to think about what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, and are there resources that you need to be able to do the work of historic preservation? And then we'll pass the mic around a little bit if folks have things that they want to share with the rest of the group. I like this group, by the way. I just have to say you're very diligent about filling out your form. Yes. Hi, I'm Steve Berg. Good to see you. Yeah. All right. Hi. Hi. Very, very nice to meet you. Yeah. And you're Shippensburg. Bergen. Yep, I've known Brian for years and years. Yep. I know all about it, so, yeah. No, thank you. Thanks for all the work. Cool. Okay. Oh, hi.
Eric Kirch. I'm
Oh.
one of the speakers.
Oh, yeah, very
But I
nice.
just want to confirm, I've met, the Lambert Farmhouse,
Mhm.
something we talked about, but I've met three of your students, I think. Christine,
Yep,
David Paletto.
Yep.
Do you remember him?
Mhm.
And Amy Warden.
okay.
Okay, in the course of my term. So you're out there. This is your
Yeah.
name for many years.
Well, I've been here for a long time, so,
Nice to
well,
meet you.
really very nice to meet you too. So I hate to do this, but I am going to interrupt you. And I would love to hear sounds like there's some really interesting conversations going on. Were there things that came up at your tables that you wanted to share with the rest of the group in terms of what you see as great opportunities for preservation, particular challenges that you're facing, or things that you really feel like you need or would like to have to make this work keep going? Anyone? Frank. I'm going to bring you the mic, Frank.
Thank you. I think the majority of our conversations revolved around the lack of in regard to challenges, the lack of assistance available, both from municipal and state government to be able to help preserve places because usually it's left to private property owners or local community groups and things like that. So being able to, and as Mr. Weltman described, more legislation to be able to provide more incentives to preservation. I think there needs to be a little push as some parts of Pennsylvania explode in population while others decrease in population. So that shift, the demographic shift, is kind of changing things a little bit. So I think more advocacy at the local level to pressure your representatives to provide a little bit of an incentive to preserve historic places, which, as you mentioned, result and Andre mentioned, result in additional economic activity for our regions. So I think that's a big component of our discussion.
So are there others? Anyone else? Yep.
I think most of us at our table kind of talked about education. We're talking about, as well as historical societies, places where you can learn, find out what needs to be done, as well as when it comes to education, learning the skills actually to preserve things, both physically with your hands, learning new and old techniques, but also just the paperwork side of everything to get everything running. Richard Landis of Fort Loudoun Historical Society.
Are there? Yeah.
Randy Heischman, Newville Historic Society. One of the big things that you all can do and what municipalities beg for are for people to go in and form groups to identify your historic and cultural resources. And then what they'll do is they'll take that list, and it usually takes about a year with a group, not a government entity. So it's private citizens. It takes about a year to establish that listing. And then what the municipalities or boroughs can do then can incorporate that into their comprehensive plan or their 10-year plans or their 20-year plans to identify and help to preserve the historic houses and your historic culture of the area.
And that wasn't meant as an advertisement, but our next workshop is going to be on how to identify resources in our communities for preservation, which is then going to be followed in the fall on a workshop on how to research properties in your communities. So that was perfect. Are there any other comments, questions that folks would like to make? Yeah.
Sure. I am Jim Griffith. I wear a couple hats. I guess my wife's store is Creative-Palooza in Carlisle. We have a very old historic building. So that would be my closest tie here, what inspired me a couple years ago to get more involved. We have the best table here. I have to say, I'm a little biased, but I mean, we have representation from government, historic societies, legislative officials, students, and bank and small business. I mean, anyway, we hit the jackpot. But briefly, we really focused on Barnett's Mill and Dickinson Township. And we learned quite a bit about the realistic challenges of such a historic property. I mean, it's amazing it's by the Yellow Breeches, but that's also one of its main pitfalls is it impacts the limestone foundation. There's funding issues, ADA compliance concerns, just the scale of those challenges. And so we talked a bit about all the different resources that are out there, like the preservation watch list and tax credits and resources you had shared from the Clean Air Board. But just some of those hard financial challenges are just big, and that's one property. So I don't know if there's anything anyone else wants to add. Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Julia Chain. I'm from the South Mountain Partnership. We had fun getting to know one another, and I think we talked a little bit about some specific projects that we all cared about, some of those being the People's Homestead, a bridge in Big Springs. And then we kind of talked about, so if the work's been done to preserve a site like the Craighead House, what happens next? How do you plan for succession and long-term success through many different iterations of boards? And I know I'm excited to be here because I think this represents a proactive opportunity for us rather than just to always be reactive. So cool. Thanks for being here.
Anyone else?
Hi, Diane Steiner. I was just going to note that we also kind of uncovered two tools that we didn't really discuss, but one is the networking that we'll have here tonight. It's someone saying, oh, you need to go talk to so-and-so. And the other is the use of social media. Some of the projects I've heard about and wanted to know what to do or how to help out has been through social media, not just human networking. Thank you.
Yeah, and one of our intentional goals here is to try to connect people, build a connection, build a network, and really make sure that this is something that can grow and keep this work moving forward after today.
Elizabeth Grant. I'm a planner with Cumberland County Planning. And I'll just add the one thing that I didn't hear yet. We had a really great conversation about public engagement in the planning process, which was mentioned by several people tonight. But then we talked specifically about looking at areas in the comprehensive plan for where you want to prioritize preservation and how the preservation of agricultural land and prime farmland can really support historic preservation as well.
We have time for probably one more comment. Anyone else have anything? Yeah, great.
Hi, I'm Kirsten with Ghostwriter, and that is really loud. So we had a really interesting mix of people because we have people here with private homes, college student who's just graduating with a history degree, which is great. So I think we talk too about, we think about historic places as buildings and really thinking about that as things other than buildings. I mean, what came up for us was up in Blue Ridge Summit where they have wetlands. It's like a highland wetlands. Hi, Frank. So things like that, as well as the challenges really being transportation, like having a transportation focused downtowns and warehouses, which we don't feel are sustainable, that aren't going to serve us in the long run. And also as an opportunity, kind of the intersectionality of, historic preservation with other really pressing needs like housing. So that's what we talked about.
Well, we don't, I'm going to stop passing the mic, but I'm not going to stop the conversation. So what I'd like to encourage you is to please, we're going to take a little bit of a break. If you want to stretch your legs, get a snack, get some coffee, get something to drink, use the restroom, which is down the stairs or down the elevator. We're going to take a little bit of a break. And after the break, we're going to actually have a panel from a number of folks from our area who have been working on different preservation projects, who are going to share with you some of the work that they've been doing and some of the tips that they have about overcoming challenges and taking advantage of opportunities. So I'm going to ask if you were the person recording for your group, if you either tore your sheet or have bent your sheet, Christine is actually going to love to take your sheet and she's going to tape it up to that board up there. So if you can bring that up to Christine, and that gives you advantage in getting to the food first. But otherwise, we'll take about a 15-minute break and then we will reconvene with our panel. So thank you. Okay. Well, wonderful. Everybody just quieted down on your own. So that's fantastic. I hope you were able to have some nice conversations, talk to somebody new that you may not have met, or exchange some ideas. At this point, we're about to move to our panel discussion. But before we do, I did want to give you one quick reminder, which is that we will be having our second workshop. It will be at the New Cumberland Library Thursday, June 13th. We do not have the registration up just yet, but we will be sending everyone who's here tonight an email with that information. So check your inbox when you get an opportunity. I am now going to turn things over to someone really special, near and dear, David Smith, who is from the Cumberland County Historical Society. David is I'm going to get this wrong, chair of the Cumberland County Historic Preservation Roundtable. He is also the person in charge of administering the Cumberland County Register of Historic Places and Watch List as well as the editor of the Cumberland County Journal. So I'm going to turn things over to David.
Thank you, Steve. My official title, if you consider a volunteer official, is Historic Preservation Coordinator. And as has been mentioned, I sort of coordinate three efforts along that line. One is the roundtable, and we meet 3 or 4 times a year. I think the next one's in June. So just watch the Historic Society social media, and the announcements will be coming out about that. And if you've already been attending, you'll automatically be invited to that. The other two projects are the Watch List, which had sort of gone dormant after the pandemic, but it is now up and active again. We just added a new property. The Peebles Homestead has been added, and you're welcome to pick up. I did lay some copies out on the table if you're interested in pursuing having your property or the area that you're interested in listed. And then, of course, the other thing is the county register, patterned off after the National Register, but not nearly as arduous a process, and a little more flexible in terms of whether you're going to get approved or not. In the 20 years that I've been sharing this, I've only turned down one property. So I think you're fairly safe if you decide to go ahead and pursue this. This evening, we've put together a panel of 3 folks. They all represent very different approaches to historic preservation. Randy will be talking about, he's of course done 2 projects, Heisman's Mill as well as his own home, which is a former tavern. And he's going to speak about the tavern process tonight. Second will be Eric Fairchild. I noticed in Andre's comments, he said something about getting elected to a government position. That's what he did. So he'll give you a perspective, not as a homeowner or a landowner, but as someone who at a governmental level really believes in the concept of historic preservation. And then third, probably most unique of all, is Carmen James, who has brought back to life, she and her group have brought back to life a building that was literally falling down, and it is now fully viable, and she will explain all that to you. So Randy, you're on. You're on.
Okay, my name's Randy Heichman. I am the father of three wonderful children and the husband of Dr. Angela Heichman. And I am very happy to be here with you tonight, take you through a perspective as a private individual restoring a home and with the problems that you will go through. First thing I'm going to recommend is don't do an impulse buy. Whatever you do your homework. I did the impulse buy. So 2012, there is an auction. I go to it and the auctioneer looks at me and goes, because we know each other, he goes, Randy, what do you think a good price of this place is? And I said, this place is so much in horrible distress, it should be knocked down. He said, I just need a price. And I said, $250,000. And he laughed. He goes, we'll start there. Well, it started there and it finished there. And I bought a house. So I called my wife and I said, come up here. I want you to look at this house. She says, no. She comes up. She says, I hate it. And I said, too bad. We bought it. So the first thing you're going to run into when you buy a historic home is you got to check the bones. Bones got to be there. Simple process. If you're buying a historic property and you're going to restore it and you think you can flip it and make money, chances are that's going to happen. So it's going to be a lifetime commitment if you decide to go into this venture. So we bought the house. Mennonites had owned it, large family. They decided that the rooms were too small. They started knocking walls out. The grounds were destroyed. We spent 1 year living in basically a camper while that house got restored, and we turned it back just about as close as we could to original. And then what that means is you follow ghost lines, you tear floors up. You may get some ghosts. Not saying spirits, whatever you believe in, you may get them once those floors come up. We had some incidences, but we did. We took 1 year and we restored it, and we restored it when we finished. We had it open for the Christmas tours right before the COVID hit in that time period. So we've been in it for about 10 years, 11 years now, and there are benefits of it, and there are very much drawbacks. So when you do historic preservation, if you are a cold person, you're going to stay cold. It is very hard to heat a historic house if you have original windows and you have original brick and very little insulation. Electric, you're going to get a high electric bill. You can almost guarantee that. The positives of it is you will go out to get your mail and somebody will stop you and they'll pull over and say, love your house. Can we come in and see it? Much to the chagrin of my wife, she comes home sometimes and there's strange people in her house and we're walking around. She just says hi and moves on. She's used to it by now. What you see there is the Laughlin photograph. It's early 20th century. And if you notice the stone wall, that is off of the Walnut Bottom Road. Walnut Bottom Road has changed drastically since that picture has been taken. When we were doing the excavating, we found the base of that stone wall and put it back where it needed to be. We copied pretty much the portico on the front. We had to tear down the one that was put up in there, and we redid all the chimneys. Now, lately we had a lightning strike that caught the third floor on fire and destroyed everything up there. We're still trying to get that back into shape. But you need backing. When I say backing, you're going to have your family behind you when you do this, because if you don't, it will tear you apart. There will be hidden costs that you cannot deal with or should not deal with, and it will affect your relationships with your family. You will find things in there that you never thought you would find. We tore the floors up and we found a museum of stuff underneath on the dirt floors. I took 3 months. If you look off to the left there, you'll see the 1760s edition. There's another house more to the left. It's not in the photograph, but you'll see it here in the next one. And pulled the floors up in that one and went to town on it. Now, the house was built by my 6th grade uncle, Samuel Weekly. It's his dad, my 7th grade grandfather, who built the Barnett's Mill that you'll hear about at some point in time here. And then when he died, the money came to him, and he adds on what you see on the right there as the Weekly Tavern, and it changes names. There's different names associated with it, but we can go to the next slide. Whoop. I didn't know that, maybe I should have the clicker. Okay, so that's what the house looked like when we bought it. The Morans, he was a professor here at Shippensburg University, bought it, and he died young, left it with his parents there. I mean, his wife and his kids, who all had moved away except for the wife. He put the sunroom onto the side. He's the one that did the wraparound windows. He did it more of a, not so much a colonial time period, did more Victorian on the inside with the fireplaces. We tore all of it down, took it back to original. Go back to next slide, please. Okay, so that's the summer house. That's on the property. Next to it is the spring house, which we believe is the oldest part of the property. We can find records that predated to the 1760s here. That's Kevin putting up our big old sign that we got from Cumberland County Historic Society for being recognized. And that's the, where you saw the glass on it, that was torn out, and that's the original porch underneath of it. Go ahead. There's my there's my grandmother on the left when we had our first Christmas there. She's about 101 when that picture was taken. On the right is me shaking the hands of the Mennonites. Now that's another story that I could tell you about sometime. It's very funny. But if you look at the kitchen, the cabinets were falling down. There was no floor. What you see there where that picture was taken was an original wall, a brick wall that they had torn out. And that brick wall had a pass-through window right behind where my grandmother is sitting right now. And we didn't know that until afterwards when we put the walls back up, or I would have put that in. Next slide. Oh, that's it. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. I am president of the Newville Historic Society, and we are definitely into preserving Newville. If you want to know anything about Newville, please come and talk to me. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll hold questions to all three presentations. Eric, you want to go ahead? And do you want the advancer?
Go back here.
Yeah.
I'll hide behind the podium if that's okay. So I'm Eric Fairchild. Pull it up. Hello? Okay, thanks. Sorry about that. I'm Eric Fairchild, and was kind of drafted into a preservation effort. And is our first slide up? No. Woke up one day to read the newspaper and discover that the Upper Allen Township had bought the farm across the street from us, which is known as the historic Lambert Farm. And it dates to 1737 for the original land warrant. And then it has an 1825 bank barn and an 1855 brick German farmhouse. So the buildings kind of appeared in the reverse order. But I'll try this instead. The location is important, not just because it's near my house, which is a tremendous motivator for wanting to save something, but the area it's in is it's along McCormick Road, which I believe many feel is one of the most beautiful areas in Cumberland County and the region. It's named after the road is named after the wealthy McCormick family from Harrisburg. They could have bought anywhere back in the 1890s when they acquired a lot of the land along McCormick Road, but they chose to build near here because it's so beautiful. The McCormicks were important people in their day. For example, I knew, or some people knew, like Vance McCormick. The McCormicks founded the Patriot News, the Market Street Bridge. Vance McCormick was mayor of Harrisburg, was active in the City Beautiful movement, the concrete steps you see along the river. They were all a McCormick effort. What I didn't know at the time, when you start researching, is Vance McCormick was also the Woodrow Wilson's campaign manager in 1916, and he was the chairman of the American delegation at the Treaty of Versailles. So that was, something we all enjoyed hearing, as neighbors, that, some of the history we'd kind of forgotten. But anyway, when the township first bought the farm, I thought that was a good thing. And it's still a good thing that we know the farm is safe that way, kind of in the public sector. But some alarm bells started going off in my head and some neighbors' heads with what was proposed for the farm. The press release said from sports fields to boat ramps along the Yellow Breaches, the potential for this land is unlimited. And that implied a much more active use of the land and development of the land than what we thought fit in with the historic character of our road. And we're in like kind of a wildlife sanctuary for bird watching and everything else along the Yellow Breaches. But anyway, we are now 4 years later. That is May of 2020. And we have saved the farmhouse so far, courtesy of a lot of people's efforts. No one person, I think, can save anything, but the man who really deserves credit or coming up with had the wherewithal to move it, Mr. Matt Taylor, is sitting at our table. So the house, was able to be moved in December of 2023 across the road. And that was a good compromise with the township to release that land back to the private sector and allow, a good home for the farmhouse that's not too far away. But I was fortunate to get a lot of help along the way. And this talk is really to share lessons. I guess number one is to be persistent. Number two might be if it could happen in a beautiful area like I feel this is, if you knew it the way that we do, it can happen anywhere. And lesson number three might be, I didn't mention, one of the first things we did was have a website, a WordPress site that only costs $48 a year. And that gained us tremendous traction and ability to communicate photos and information and history and attract other people to the project. So I should have advanced before, but the workshops are intended to help communities build capacity to preserve historic properties, landscapes, and farms. And Upper Allen already had such capacity, largely as a result of this 1976 publication called Early Architecture, and which identified the historic properties in Upper Allen at the time and created 4 historic districts. And one of the issues with Upper Allen is they're not really taking advantage of the capacity and the benefits of the historic districts. And they give little support to the HARB, in my mind. And despite all the background information and the notes contained in this publication, the commissioners hired a consultant in 2022 to tell them why our historic districts exist. And that consultant actually, I think, did reference conveniently one of the Cumberland County Journal articles in 1984 that gave a fuller explanation for the origins of our historic districts and the process that they went through. But anyway, the consultant then went on to recommend that 3 of the 4 historic districts be dissolved, including the one on McCormick Road. And their methodology identified any building built after 1900 as a modern intrusion. And this would include all the buildings built by the McCormick family with all this wealth and everything. It was just astounding to me. But if you pick a weird methodology, you'll get a weird result. But anyway, through the efforts of Phil Walsh, who also is here tonight at the table and also got elected recently as an Upper Allen commissioner, he started a petition on change.org, and we were able to, create enough outcry and interest into saving the historic districts for now. And also involved in that effort was Mr. Frank Grumbine, who's at our table. He was very helpful and came to the township meetings, that is another thing. A lesson is to go to public meetings and participate and, share your thoughts. I wanted to say your community may have a publication similar to this Early Architecture because many of them were done around the time of the bicentennial. So you may want to look for that. It helped us greatly in the initial research. This is the Lambert House itself, and it was built in 1855, so forth. I won't go through all that. The house has been marred by several kind of ill-advised additions over the years that really obscured what it was. Somebody's, I think it was Matt Taylor, compared the inside of one of the additions as to the saloon in Gunsmoke. I may have to watch Gunsmoke again, but all kind of weird balconies and woodwork, and it was just a very strange house. But some of us who've worked on houses and know architecture thought, you strip off of those additions, you really have something to work with. And that turned out to be the case. One of the things we did early on, this is another lesson learned, is we had a friend who was a professional abstractor by the name of David Paletto, who happened to go through Dr. Berg's program here at Shippensburg, has a master's in historic preservation. It's also a professional abstractor. So we were very confident we had the history going back all the way through the deeds of the recorder's office. And that took us back to the 1830s. And then, as luck would have it, my wife's aunt, her name is Sharon Beach, and she lives in Florida, of all places, to be helping us. She's a retired paralegal who's an expert at transcribing old deeds. They're mostly handwritten. Some of it's elegant handwriting, others you just can't decipher any of it. But she was able to decipher all the deeds. We were able to, and then she has expertise in genealogy. She's recognized by Ancestry.com and so forth. She was able to trace all the family relationships and connect all the families on McCormick Road were basically related at one time. And through the website, we also attracted the attention of a retired archivist from the PHMC who lives in Upper Allen. And he was then able to take us further back from 1806 all the way back to the 1737 land warrant, and we knew we were getting a professional result. He was also determined that the original builder of the log cabin, the Lambert farmhouse, the brick house replaced a log cabin that dates from the 1780s. There's a beam in the house from 1789 with it inscribed W.S. Scott. And we were able to determine that Scott served in the Revolutionary War. He was a captain. He was captured by the British at the Battle of Fort Washington, was imprisoned, I think, for nearly 2 years. He was one of like 700 or 800 survivors out of 2,000. So the house has that kind of history. We almost lost the house early on into the process by police drills that were planned. Township bought the property, in May of 2020. Here's July 2020, and they wanted to do police drills, kind of despite the early architecture publication and so forth. Another thing the township did is they did not want their own historic architectural review board in the property for whatever reason. So they weren't really getting full historically, accurate information from their own, volunteer board that operates the HARB. Luckily, the police chief at the time, Mr. Adams, had his own interest in history, and I just kind of think or hope or pray that he toned down some of the police drills that we were able to keep the farmhouse. So I mentioned before we had a website, and to build interest in the website, we did yard signs. And we happened to have a supporter who was a professional graphic artist, designed a logo and the signs, and these kind of signs cost about $5 a piece. And we bought 100, and they were all up and down McCormick Road and throughout Upper Allen Township. And then when we launched the website, people knew what to look for. And I'm a believer in don't just criticize, try to propose a solution, try to educate people. Knowledge is power. And we were able to put a lot of good information on the website that just built more traffic. So we created a vision for the farm. And we, as luck would have it, I think I said this before, I have a cousin who is a landscape architect and professional park planner. And she's been doing that for 40 years. She did a study for greenways for Cumberland County in the year 2000. So I've been hearing about park design for 40 years, especially the work of Frederick Law Olmsted, who designed Central Park and a lot of the beautiful national parks in our country. If you want to have a nice park, which is the intent for this property, you want to follow the Olmsted principles. They're tried and true. So anyway, we incorporated a vision that offered a lot of Olmsted principles. We suggested that the historic buildings and features be preserved, that 10 or 12 horses be returned for use in existing rec board programs, and that the farm be developed passively with such amenities as nature trails, community and wildflower gardens, and unique and recreational educational features not found in most parks. We also suggested that you link this property to the nearby Lower Allen Park, which is about a half mile away, and consider using McCormick Road as a greenway. The other rationale is it's much cheaper to plant meadows and wildflowers than spray chemicals and mow parkland. Much cheaper. Other parts of our marketing efforts were to, at one point, raise money for potentially having a nonprofit buy the farmhouse and keep it as totally period Civil War. We were not able to raise enough money for that, but that was our marketing effort. We did discover in the process there are 2 other houses on McCormick that are, well, one house left on McCormick and another one in Lisburn that were all from the same family. And they have beautiful woodwork. It was the Sherrick family, beautiful woodworking inside, and they became a comparison for what to expect in the Lambert house. And we're proud of the little newspaper article. You see the image of Abraham Lincoln. That was on the same page. There was an advertisement for this farm. It was sold in 1860, 5 years after it was built. Mrs. Lambert was dying, and it was the same time Abraham Lincoln was running for president. And when the additions were finally removed last fall by hand, this is what we have. It's just a beautifully proportioned Greek Revival farmhouse with all kind of elegance, carved stonework and lintels. It just is phenomenal. And it's unfortunate. I mean, they were really good in the olden times siting houses. It was perfectly sited, but it is now was moved by Wolf House Movers in December, and that's another story. And that was done really by Matt. Had Matt Taylor not stepped forward with the money to fund the move, the house would not have been saved. And we've saved the house, but I don't believe we saved the farm. This is the current proposal I received recently from, I believe it's the most current one, from Upper Allen Township, as to the extent of asphalt and trails and so forth that will now be on this farm. The gray is obviously asphalt and parking for 547 cars, and we are on 59 acres. And the red are paved trails. A paved trail nowadays is 8 feet wide. So there's not only a perimeter trail, which is a really good idea to have a perimeter trail, but all kind of internal, inside trails connecting everything that is just going to ruin the landscape and not take advantage of the site. So that's kind of our story. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you. Well, that's right, later.
Thank you. One of my favorite parts of Eric's process, well, 2 things really. One, stepping in and actually getting elected to the township government so that he could have he and Phil both could have a more positive effect on preserving what had been in place but was sort of being ignored in Upper Allen. And the other thing, to have the vision, you saw what that house looked like when it was initially purchased as part of the farm. And then to have the vision to know that underneath all of that was the building that's now been moved across the road and now will come under private ownership. So our third panelist is Carmen James, another very different story. Probably many of you have seen newspaper articles about it. but she'll bring us up to date on what's happening with Mount Tabor.
Hello. As David said, my name is Carmen James. I'm part of the Mount Tabor Preservation Project. And I want to acknowledge that I have two members of our nonprofit. David Toner is here, and we have Julia Chan in the back. And with Julia is one of our faithful volunteers who is painting with us not too long ago on a Saturday, and Bill Chan. So what I wanted to briefly tell you is that Mount Tabor is an AME Zion church that sat abandoned for about 50 years. My connection is I attended it as a child. David's connection is that he grew up down the street, and he would hear the music coming across the fields. He says waffling across the field or wafling across the field when he was young. Mount Tabor is 1.5. Oh, I forgot I had pictures. Mount Tabor is 1.5 stories. It's log constructed with log and chinking, and also cladding. It's pine logs and cladding. As I said, it's 1.5 stories. It's circa 1870. We have a deed. There is no documentation. We have a deed that dates 1878. It's been listed on the Preservation PA at-risk list. It stays on there, even though it looks pretty good these days, but it'll stay on there for life. It's been listed on the Cumberland County Register of Historic Places, and it's also in 2021 listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It is also part of a cemetery that's located, down the street, I would say maybe 50 feet. On the opposite side, and that cemetery is the final resting place for 7 Civil War veterans. I grew up not far from this church and never knew that there were 7 Civil War veterans that were buried there. This church was abandoned for about 50 years. The local district, it stopped having services in around 1970. The local bishop that was out of Maryland, wasn't aware that it even existed. And as I said, it sat abandoned for about 50 years. In 2016, it was discovered through the collection of stories. And there were a group of volunteers. It started to be, I think, maybe 5 or 6 of us. Andre talked about having connections with historical societies. Cumberland County Historical Society listened to us when we said that we wanted to be a 501c3. They became our fiscal sponsor, and we became a 501c3. This is our logo. This is a picture of what the church looked like in 2016, from 2016 to 2017. And that's one of the things, you have to establish ownership. It took us from 2016 to 2017 to get an owner. The Bishop area in Baltimore sold it to the borough of Mount Holly Springs. They agreed to take ownership, and they paid $1. And they are now the owner, and we rent the church from them. We pay $1 a month, so I believe that the borough made their money back. We give them $12, and they only paid $1. So I'm in banking. I'm not a fool. I know. So anyway, this is a logo that we have, and things just fall into place. If you're very lucky. And Lindsay Varner, who worked for the Cumberland County Historical Society, I walked into her office one day with David and I think Pam Steele, and I saw this on her wall, and I said, "That's Mount Tabor." And she said, "Yes, it is." And I said, "Can we have that? We would like this as our logo." So this is our logo. If you donate to us, I will send you a thank you letter, and it will have that at the top of the letter. Never be afraid to ask for a donation. That's something I will say to you. This is what it looked like in 2016. As I said, it's 1.5 stories, pine logs. And this is a split screen. This is what it looked like in 2016, and this is what it looks like today. Grants, and basically, we received a phone call from a senator who isn't even our senator, but he still calls us, and said, "I read about you in the newspaper." So that's another thing that you want to do: get people to hear your story. We were discovered through the collection of a story, and we keep telling that story over and over. So your partnerships, getting your story told in newspapers, website, newsletter, Facebook. And we received a phone call, and they said, "I'd like to help you. What would you like?" And we asked for, because as I said, we had a cemetery. You also have a cemetery. We asked for a fence around the cemetery because kids were playing soccer. We didn't have a lot of headstones, but it made a really great soccer field. So we asked for a fence to protect the cemetery. And as a result of that, we received a grant from DCED that we didn't have to match for $275,000. And that allowed us to match our other grants. So you can see on the right, or on this screen, I'm not sure if there, but you'll see the finished results and what it looked like prior. You'll also see the beautiful seams. I just love the beautiful seams. I will also tell you that the front of the church is original wood. The side is old cedar that our contractor was able to find. And that's what the inside of the church prior to the painting. We found that we had lead paint on the walls, not on the ceiling. And after painting the ceiling, I can see why it didn't have lead paint on it, because who wants to paint the ceiling? But that's what it looks like now. And I will tell you, we had a hole in the tin roof that went to a hole in the ceiling of the second floor that went to a hole in the ceiling of the first floor. And that is, I don't know, no, you don't have a red button, but if you look at the left-hand corner, there's new wood, and you can see new wood in the ceiling and new wood on the floor. We also have electricity, which we didn't have before. And I say when you see this picture, because we have we have someone who's younger than I am that was able to remove the blue box from the toilet, so we have a better picture. But I tell people that the blue box that you see there isn't the TARDIS, it's the toilet. So we have moved that out of the way, and we're very proud of this because we did not have electricity before. We had an annual meeting, and usually our meetings are Zoom because we have one of our vice president lives in Vermont, at Lindsay Varner, and but we had our annual meeting, and we have electricity, and one of our members took this. So I will tell you that right now, we still have challenges. The one challenge that we have is that it won't fall down, and it was at risk of falling down prior. But now we're acquiring land. The electric company, if you stand in front of the church to the right, the electric company gave us 1.3 acres, and our architect had designed a lovely parking lot that had about 12 parking spaces, 2 ADA spaces, and our ADA door was on the side. On the opposite side, this is the pretty side. You can see this from Mountain Street. We were gung-ho. We went to South Middleton because that's in the South Middleton, and they said, no, you can't put a parking lot there. So now we're on the other side, paying the architect to do another design for the other side. And we're waiting for the descendant of the builder to decide whether she'll give us the land or not. So sometimes it's hard to do good things, I'll tell you that, and not to get disappointed. But once it's standing, take a deep breath and know that once it looks like this, then your plan has to be your business plan, your marketing plan. How are you going to keep it going? Because when it starts looking good, you don't get as many donations.
Thank you, all three of you. Questions for any one of the panelists or a question that all three can respond to. Tom? Tom's comment was that Vance McCormick was a football coach for the Carlisle Indian School. So you had also had a question. Did you have stairway problems?
Okay, so when the Mennonites, and I love Mennonites, when they moved in, they tore one of the original staircases out, which was not the original staircases. But no, we didn't have any. We were able to find like I said, ghost lines. We found the ghost lines and we redid that stairway. But when the original house, you could see where the stairway had went up where the big walk-in fireplace was at one point in time. So, you know, you got to make a concession. So we went back to the one that the Mennonites tore out instead of the original one. Mm-hmm. And takes a turn. Yeah, it goes up. Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, I tore it out. I saw the gold. Problem is, the landing was so low because it was designed for people 200 years ago.
Yes.
So to make it functional, we put the landing higher.
Yeah, so when they constructed houses, in my case, it would have been the English in our area. The steps, their shoes were much smaller than what our shoes are of today. So it was not uncommon to have a step tread that was 6 inches wide. So try going up and down that, which we do.
It's actually not the shoes that are bigger, it's our feet that are bigger. Other question, yes, Julia. Overcoming bad news. Any comments from?
So Julie, as you know, being a private owner of a mill and trying to get grants as a private owner is almost impossible. So that's a challenge that if you have something and you think you can get grants as a private owner, there's nothing really available to you. So you have to find what's called a friends group. Andre will know all about that. Other people here will too. So you have to establish a friends group to get those grants. But there is a partnership that can happen between private and public.
Anything from Eric or Cartman on barriers that you encountered that you figured out a way around?
Yeah, I mean, it can get very complicated when you try to set up nonprofit organizations and so forth. We tried for grant funding from the Foundation for Enhancement for Communities and things like that, and we could not get that. But I just think resiliency, determination, tomorrow's another day, and you just press forward.
I'd say the same thing. Disappointment. We applied for a state marker and we didn't get it. And that's something that we still mourn the fact that we don't have. And our friends at Craighead House, every time I drive by, I'm like, oh, they have a state marker. But don't be disappointed. I will also, one thing I didn't talk about is our cemetery that we have, and that's a different kind of preservation. And disappointment is when you have a beautiful little cemetery and you have a beautiful flag that's flying over your veterans, and one of the neighbors puts up a 25-foot barn, or it's called a pole barn, I think he calls it, but it's 25 feet in front of it. And there's really nothing you can do. So you don't talk about it privately, but publicly you talk about it.
We have time for one more question. Frank. Politics of preservation. Here's our expert.
I don't know, just persevere, be determined, and don't go away. And it's very easy to run for public office. It only takes 10 signatures to get your name on a nominating petition. I wish more people would do it. It's kind of what's wrong with our society. And you can be a lot more effective on the inside. And it's the way, you know, when we won our election, we said, be the change you want to see in the world and in your own community. And I believe that.
Thank you very much. So I just wanted to say one more time, thank you to all of our partners. Thank you for all of our speakers and presenters. Thank you all for taking time out of your very busy lives to be here tonight, to share your stories, to be part of this. I wanted to remind you that we do have the workshops coming up, so please watch for those. And the post event evaluation has been distributed. So if you could take a moment before you head for the door to complete that, we would really appreciate that. I just wanted to let you know we do have the space for a little while longer. So if you do want to talk to people or chat or ask any questions, please feel free to take advantage of the space. And thank you so much for coming tonight. We really, really appreciated it. And we hope you found this a useful start to our workshops on historic preservation here in the South Mountain region. So thank you all and have a great night.